Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: deep cuts on Dalal Street despite a late recovery. The sensex loses over 900 points. Nifty drops below 24,000. More than 6 lakh crore rupees in market cap wiped out today. The rupee also hitting a fresh record low against the dollar. India Inc. stares at the sharpest earnings downgrade since the pandemic. Nifty 50 companies see a 10% earnings downgrade on an average in October. Cement, energy, financial services and autos are the worst impacted. Tech companies and property developers are the outliers. Less than 24 hours before the U.S. votes, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris launch an all-out campaign blitz in swing states. At least 78 million voters have already cast an early ballot. Harris grabs an unexpected lead in a poll carried out in Iowa, which has traditionally voted Republicans. Israel claims to have killed a Hezbollah commander inside Lebanon as the bombing campaign continues. The World Food Programme warns the humanitarian situation in Gaza could soon escalate into a famine as Israeli forces continue to restrict relief work in the region. At least 36 people are dead after a bus carrying 60 people plunges into a gorge in Uttarakhand. Authorities fear the death toll could rise as rescue operations continue. Auto stocks see heavy selling despite better than expected October sales from M&M, Hero Motor and TVS. Bajaj Auto misses the mark with domestic sales falling 8%. The HSBC manufacturing PMI shows a pickup in factory activity in October after hitting an 8-month low in September. India's auto industry revs up for an electric November. Royal Enfield to launch its first electric motorcycle tonight. Maruti Suzuki set to unveil a premium SUV. Mahindra Group will launch 2 luxury SUVs later this month as the competition heats up. As sugar stocks tumble on the Dalal Street, industry calls on the government to increase the minimum support price and ethanol prices. Sugar mills warn of delayed payments to farmers and a potential default if the government does not intervene. Well, let's start with the market action, and it was not a particularly great way to start the trading week. The sensex lost over 900 points today, and the Nifty down by over 300 points in what was broad-based selling that we saw. So the markets, however, did bear some losses in late trade, but nevertheless, the sensex closing 941 points lower, the Nifty down by over 1%. The mid-cap index lost over 700 points, and the Nifty Bank was down by about 400 odd points as well. So across the board selling pressure there. Prashant is standing by now to take us through the triggers behind the kind of sell-off that we've seen this afternoon. Prashant.
A little surprising, Shireen, because nothing really gave an indication that you'd have a 300-point cut on the Nifty. Although I must say that from the lows of the day, there was a solid 150-plus point recovery that we saw on the Nifty. The Nifty Bank also came up from the day's lows. And, of course, the mid-cap and small-cap indices ending lower, but off the lows there as well. I'll just sort of run through the dateline in terms of the big events which are lined up over the course of the next 4 or 5 days. And I think this is important because the first up, of course, is U.S. elections. By Wednesday morning, we will know who the new U.S. president is. And you are seeing a bit of sort of pairing of risk across the board in global markets as well. It's not very evident, but you look at things like, for example, the U.S. dollar. You look at the rates market in the U.S. You look at currency crosses like the USD JPY. Markets essentially were priming for a Trump victory. But as you're going closer and closer into the U.S. election, I think there is a bit of pullback which is happening across those positions because betting markets now have also converged closer to where polling averages were. So it's like a 50-50 toss-up right now with just, less than 48 hours to go to the U.S. election verdict. So, that's the first reason. Nobody really wanting to take a position going into the outcome, which is very, very binary in that sense. The other one, of course, is China's stimulus. This hope that, and I think, we spoke with Kotak Institutional Equities on Thursday, and I think the gentleman there put it well. There is competition for flows. And I think that is a big reason why, which was not there. I think this is a new thing which has happened over the last 1 quarter or so. And I think that's a big reason, that's at the margin a big reason why foreigners have been selling. There was this Reuters article which floated a package of 1.4 trillion with promise of more if Trump wins the U.S. election. Third, of course, is the FOMC, which is, of course, consensus still expects a 25 basis point cut. Remember, the jobs data was very, very weak. But, of course, there were reasons which we flagged off behind the very weak data. Just to kind of circle back to individual names, etc., which saw large cuts. And again, unanticipated, because Hero MotoCorp, take that stock as an example, 20% from the highs going into today's session and another 4% cut. And sales in the festive month actually have been pretty good. Hero did recover a little bit, about 2% from the day's low. Bajaj was down 3.5%. Sun Pharma was lower. There were names like Grasim, Adani Ports, BPCL, which were some of the other losers. On the upside, you had Mahindra & Mahindra, which looked good. They've been sort of guiding for better tractor sales for a while. Tech Mahindra and Cipla were some of the other names. The broader market pressure shown through in PVR Inox, contrary to sort of the talk that maybe weakened box office collections have been good. Stock was down 6%, one of the biggest volume-led losers. There was Polymedicure. Some of these, Prudent Corp, a mutual fund distributor, some of these are just pullbacks after 3-4 days of very sharp run-ups that we've seen. Manappuram Finance was slower. ABFRL, Edelweiss was down 5%. Chennai Petro, Force Motors, CESE, transformer companies like Voltamp, and a real estate play like Brigade Enterprises were also lower. I just want to just quickly wrap up the gainers as well. Rainbow Hospitals continues its up move from last week. Azad Engineering, we had the company with us on Bazaar earlier. Large order, Jyoti Structures, Walkhart, Taj, GVK back above 300 rupee levels once again after it's undergone a bit of a correction. From the all-time highs, this is essentially how the indices really stack up at. Nifty is down about nearly 9%. Nifty Bank is down about 6%. You have the mid-cap index, which is down 8.5%, and small-cap index, which is down about 6% or so from the all-time high levels, which is an improvement. The small-cap index actually was down almost 10%, about 5 days back, and that's corrected, and we're down about just 6% or so. I want to leave you with just one thing, which is not very well understood, but some in the market, Shireen, are talking about this particular factor as well, particularly because there is the AMFI circular on, and the circular is called Standard Practice on Institutional Mechanism for Identification and Deterrence of Market Abuse. So this circular from AMFI is applicable from today. And some are pointing out that traders and asset management companies, local investors, because of this circular, would be less aggressive in buying and selling, even if the price is in their favor. Remember, foreigners have been selling, locals have been buying, everything that FIs have been selling. But what if this circular is dissuading local traders and asset management companies and mutual funds from stepping in an aggressive way as like they've been doing? So this is something which at the margin I've heard, this is more of a technical factor, not a fundamental factor. But we'll investigate more and get you more details. Back to you.
All right, Prashant, many thanks for joining us. Well, some of the factors that could have weighed on the markets this afternoon, as Prashant was pointing out, coming off the intraday lows, but nevertheless closing deep in the red. Now, the lower-than-expected earnings reported by a clutch of large-cap companies have prompted analysts to downgrade their earnings forecast for the full year. Now, according to Bloomberg data, the earnings per share estimate for Nifty 50 companies has been cut by more than 10% in October alone. Cement, energy, financial services and auto are the worst impacted sectors. IT companies and property developers are the outliers. Meanwhile, Jefferies has downgraded earnings estimates of more than 60% of the 98 companies it covers. Jefferies says the cut is the highest since early 2020, and it's attributed this to above normal rainfall as well as weak government spending. So that's a bit of a concern as well. But the big international story, the U.S. presidential election campaign has entered the last leg with less than 24 hours to go for voting to begin. Most opinion polls point towards a dead heat. Democratic nominee Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump. It will be an all-out campaign blitz for Harris and Trump across key battleground states today. Harris has urged voters to support free and fair elections and not fall prey to allegations of election fraud. Trump, while speaking at a rally in Georgia, accused Harris of violating her oath and eradicating the sovereign border. The turnout of early voters has been high this time. According to University of Florida's data, over 78 million Americans have already cast an early ballot. This is nearly half of the 160 million votes cast in 2020, the highest turnout in the U.S. presidential polls history.
I would ask, in particular, people who have not yet voted, to not fall for his tactic, which I think includes suggesting to people that if they vote, their vote won't matter. Suggesting to people that somehow the integrity of our voting system is not intact so that they don't vote. And again, I think that it is a tactic. It is meant to distract from the fact that We have and support free and fair elections in our country. We did in 2020. He lost.
With your vote on Tuesday, I will end inflation. I will stop the invasion of massive numbers of criminals coming into our country. Thank you very much, Kamala and Joe. And I will bring back the American dream, and we'll bring it back stronger than ever before. But this is all you need to know. Kamala broke it, and we will fix it, and we're going to fix it fast. Every day, they're talking about extending hours and stuff. Who ever heard of this stuff? We should have one-day voting and paper ballots.
Could be made on Tuesday night if Kamala Harris of the Democratic Party, the incumbent vice president, goes on to defeat Donald Trump of the Republican Party, the former president. She will, if she does that, become the first ever woman president of the United States, something that has never happened in the close to 250-year history of the United States of America. While history is there on the one side, on the other side, there is momentum. Donald Trump seems to be the candidate who has momentum behind him. He has tailwind behind him. He has narrowed the gap, both in the popular vote as well as in the battleground states, to less than 1%. A month and a half ago, Kamala Harris had a 2-point, maybe even a 2.5-point lead. But that has been narrowed, particularly just in the last month of October, leading up to, of course, November 5th, which is Election Day.
Well, that's the big verdict that is awaited. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And as the curtains come down on what has been a tumultuous campaign season, all eyes are on the 7 swing states. Now, these states account for 93 electoral college votes and hold the keys to the White House. On your screens, we have for you the states that's the success rate for the last 10 years as far as the presidential elections are concerned. So, for example, Nevada has voted for a candidate who went on to win the presidential elections 9 out of the last 10 times. Michigan has voted for a winning candidate 8 out of the last 10 times. Pennsylvania, of course, will be one of the key states to watch out for, and that accounts for 19 electoral college votes. It voted for Trump in 2016. It's backed a Republican for the first time since 1988 and backed Biden in 2020. Now, traditionally, that is what we've been telling you as far as Pennsylvania is concerned. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has grabbed an unexpected lead in an Iowa poll. The poll conducted by Seltzer & Co. gives Harris a 3 percentage point lead over Trump. This would come as a jolt for the Republicans, as Iowa had voted for Trump in the last 2 elections. It also has a success rate of 70% in the last 10 presidential elections. We will, of course, speak exclusively to Ann Seltzer, the president of the polling firm, at 6:30 p.m. tonight. Well, the U.S. elections will have a significant impact on the global economy, on financial markets and emerging economies like India. Lata is here to explain what it could mean. Lata.
Well, let's start with how Trump and Harris are perceived for each of the financial markets. Trump victory is seen as very positive for equity markets and very negative for bonds. Trump win is also seen making dollar stronger, and that'll have its repercussions. But first, the macros. On the macros, both Trump and Harris policies may lead to widening of the U.S. fiscal deficit, but Trump will widen the fiscal deficit much more than Harris. Trump policies are seen pushing inflation higher. Harris win could mean, therefore, lower inflation. Hence, on growth, because of higher inflation, growth may be lower under Trump policies, but growth could be better under Harris. Trump victory will mean higher interest rates and stronger dollar. Therefore, it will be the opposite under Harris, that is slightly weaker dollar and slightly lower rates. Now, the non-profit think tank called Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, or CRFB, sees Harris's policies increasing the U.S. deficit by $3.95 trillion by 2035. But Trump is going to be worse. His policies may increase the U.S. deficit by $7.75 trillion, actually by double by 2035. The CFRB says following programs of Harris will increase expenses, extension of tax cuts for families that are earning less than $400,000, expanding the child tax credit to help families in lower income with more children, expanding the Affordable Care Act, which means higher insurance subsidies, supporting affordable housing, and increasing the minimum wage. The amounts are given on the right. I'm not reading them. Now, Harris will also bring in more revenues. She will raise revenues by upping the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, increasing capital gains tax. Now, that's why it's equity negative, upping the Medicare tax, reforming international tax rules, and lowering the cost of prescription drugs. That will, of course, mean lower revenue outgo. Trump is going to increase deficit by, of course, cutting taxes. We all know that, cutting taxes for corporates under the TCJA, that is Tax Cuts Job Act. Exempt tips and overtime from taxes. Actually, Harris also has promised that. He will also end taxation of Social Security benefits. That's a huge outgo. And he will also spend less by reducing illegal immigrants into the country. Trump is going to raise revenues through tariffs and more tariffs. He will also reverse the energy policy and will exempt oil output. Of course, that's not his area. He will also end some education support programs. Let's come to immigration. On immigration, Harris will favor increasing legal immigration, while Trump is going to reduce all immigration across the board. Thus, Trump may actually end up tightening the labor market, and this can especially hurt infotech companies, IT companies. So what's in it for emerging markets like India? A Harris win may lead to continuation of the present trends largely, but a Trump win by strengthening the US dollar will likely lead to weaker EM currencies. More importantly, China is expected to retaliate the tariffs that Trump is expected to impose by weakening its own currency, weakening the renminbi, which will force other Asian EMs to also depreciate their currencies, including India. They are likely to weaken their currencies in competitive depreciation. Trump may reduce the space for emerging market central banks to cut rates. He may have a negative impact on global growth and therefore emerging market growth because of the likely supply disruptions he may cause by higher tariffs. But here's the silver lining. In the emerging market group, Indian economy and the Indian rupee is seen least affected by Trump's policies.
All right, Lata, many thanks. And you can catch our special coverage of the US elections. All angles will be taken up starting 6 p.m. with the best newsmakers and experts. And, of course, catch that big interview with Ann Selzer, the talked about pollster and the most talked about poll over the last few hours. Tensions in West Asia continue to rise. At least 4 people have been killed and many wounded after the Israeli military conducted an overnight raid in Lebanon. Lebanese officials said that around 10 people were wounded in Israeli attacks on government hospitals in the region. The World Health Organization has appealed for medical workers to be protected after Israel killed more Lebanese paramedics. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme has warned that the humanitarian situation in Gaza could soon escalate into a famine. This as Israeli military continues to severely restrict the entry of food and other supplies into the enclave. Israel has also attacked a hospital in northern Gaza, severely wounding a child and damaging the facility's nursery. Oil prices surged by over $1 after OPEC Plus said it would delay a planned December output hike by 1 month. The group of oil exporting nations was due to increase output by 180,000 barrels per day in December. Remember, OPEC Plus had delayed the increase in output from October because of falling prices, weak demand and rising supplies. In stock-specific action back home, Sun Pharma shares down in trade after a ruling by a U.S. District Court delayed the launch of its new drug that treats alopecia. The court's ruling granted a preliminary injunction to U.S.-based company Insight, which claimed Sun Pharma infringed on its patent. The drug launch will be delayed until a favorable court verdict is passed or the patent in question expires, which is slated to expire in December of 2026. Shapoorji Pallonji Group company Afcon's infrastructure listed on the Lal Street today. Shares listed at an 8% discount, but they did recover, ending the day higher by over 2%. Reliance Industries is likely to launch the initial public offer of its telecom arm Jio in 2025. A Reuters report citing sources states that analysts have valued the IPO at over $100 billion and the conglomerate's retail unit will be listed much later. The sugar industry has called on the government to increase the minimum support price and ethanol prices. Sugar mills have warned of delayed payments to farmers and a potential default if the government does not intervene. The industry has also said that sugar prices have fallen below the cost of production owing to excessive build-up of stock. Well, we will head into a break, but up next, India's auto industry is revving up for an electric November. That and more when we return. India's manufacturing activity accelerated in October after slowing down for the previous 3 months. The HSBC Purchasing Manufacturing Index compiled by S&P Global rose to 57.5 in October from a reading of 56.5 in September, which was the lowest that we've seen in 8 months. Any PMI reading above 50 indicates expansion. We've been in that territory for a while. Auto stocks saw some heavy selling today in line with the markets. This despite the fact that we saw better October sales from M&M, Hero Motor and TVS. Festive cheer drove both wholesale and retail sales of both passenger vehicles and two-wheelers. However, Bajaj Auto missed the mark with domestic sales down 8%. India's auto industry is revving up for an electric November. Royal Enfield will launch its first electric motorcycle tonight, while Maruti Suzuki is all set to unveil a premium SUV. The Mahindra Group will also launch 2 luxury SUVs later this month as the competition heats up. Parikshit is standing by now with the details. It's an electric November, Parikshit.
Well, exciting times ahead in November. Maruti Suzuki will be unveiling the EVX tonight in Milan. Now, this will be the global unveil of their production-ready electric vehicle, the first from Suzuki Motor Company. This has been built in collaboration with Toyota. The technological inputs have come from Toyota. This car is going to be manufactured in Suzuki's Gujarat plant. At first, it will be exported to markets in Europe, later to Japan. The plan to launch it in India is as follows. It will be first showcased at the Auto Expo in January next year, with a commercial launch by May or June next fiscal. So the India launch has actually been delayed by 2 months because of validation and testing related issues. We're told that Maruti Suzuki would like to price this around 25 lakh rupees. It's going to have a range of at least 500 kilometers with a 60 kilowatt hour battery. It will take on the electric Creta, which is being launched early next year. Now let's come to Royal Enfield. Now this is going to be a big one. This is the first mainstream automobile player to launch an electric motorcycle. It could possibly be called the Flying Flea. Why the Flying Flea? Because the teaser that we see on social media has parachutes dropping the motorcycle. And in World War II, we had seen how the Flying Flea was used by the forces, and the motorcycle used to be dropped by parachutes. So there is speculation that that Royal Enfield would call it the Flying Flea. At the same time, this is going to be positioned in the high-end premium segment and will be the costliest Royal Enfield to date. Now let's come to the Mahindra Group. As we had reported, the Mahindra Group will be launching 2 new luxury SUVs on the 26th of November, one of which will be an off-roader. The company announced the names today. One of them will be XCV9E and the other is BE6E. Now, both of them will have a high range. The pricing will be under 35 lakh rupees. We'll have advanced semiconductors and a lot of connected car features. So clearly, lots to expect in November as far as the electric vehicle sector goes.
All right, Parikshit, appreciate you joining us. Now, Indigo is all set to take to the skies with its business class offering from the 14th of November. Madhiya is standing by to tell us what we should expect. Madhiya.
Well, November is an important month for Indian aviation as well. We know that Vistara is merging with Air India, and 14th November is set to be a historic day for Indigo. It will debut the business class product on 6 daily flights on the highly popular Delhi-Mumbai route. The first aircraft with business class cabin landed in India last week and is getting ready to operate these 6 flights every day. The 3 flights from Delhi to Mumbai will be at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m., while the flights from Mumbai to Delhi will be at 10 a.m., 4 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. Now, each of these flights will feature 12 business class seats. So that makes it 72 business class seats across the 6 flights on the Delhi-Mumbai route every day as of now. Indigo has set a flat fare of 18,000 rupees for all business class seats as compared to a higher fare on other carriers like Air India and Vistara. Looking ahead, Indigo says all flights on the Delhi-Mumbai route are expected to feature a business class cabin by early January. Then by March 2025, business class will be available on all flights from Delhi to Bengaluru and Chennai. And in the next 14 months, Indigo aims to induct a total of 45 aircraft equipped with business class seating. These planes will cater to 12 routes, so 268 Indigo flights are expected to have business class offerings in the next 14 months.
All right, Madhiya, many thanks for joining us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. More news and updates will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned.